Hi, everyone. I'm Joni Parsons, co-creator of Rebel 11. We created Rebel 11 about 6 years ago to have informative, edgy, timely, and fun events for women. We also hold events here in Seattle and retreats around the globe. There's nothing more than I love than to be outside, whether it's hiking in the mountains, walking around Green Lake here in Seattle, or just meandering through my backyard. It is the most beautiful time for me to spend time with nature. And it is so meaningful because it impacts the greater world around us, everything that we do. I met Kathy and Mary Kate many years ago when I was working at the Northwest and San Francisco Flower and Garden Shows and Sunset Magazine. And it's such a delight to have them here today. Thank you so much for joining us. Kathleen Brenzel is a former editor of Sunset Magazine and Sunset Western Garden Books. And Mary Kate Mackey is a prolific garden writer, speaker, and teacher whose work has been in garden publications around the US. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, we're happy to be here.
Delighted.
For sure.
Delighted. It's so great. It's been such a long time, and I'm so happy to talk about your new book. You have it right up there, but here it is, The Healthy Garden, and it's Simple Steps for a Greener World. And I want to talk to you first about what was the inspiration for this book?
Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I had long been interested in gardening and health, and in an early edition of the Sunset Western Garden book that I did, I wrote about lessons from the land. And because I was very inspired by, work that some of the local ecologists were doing, and realizing that the healthiest gardens are the ones that are using plants that belong in a region, that belong in the conditions and the soils and so forth. And why do we need all of these chemicals that gardeners were leaning on? I thought there's got to be a better way. And so I wrote this article on the beauty of a natural garden is that it's alive. It's alive under the soil. It's alive in the trees with birds and butterflies. It touches the land lightly. And that idea kind of went around and around in my head. And then I thought, and I did pitch a book way back when about this. But then I got together with Mary Kate, and I was familiar with her gathering of gardeners. And we sat down and we said, hey, you know what? We could cast a wide net with these gathering people and find out how they feel about healthy gardens. And at the same time, we were finding a lot about how gardens can influence our health. And so that's how the book kind of took flight, and we said, yeah, we're off to the races.
Let's do this.
The gathering of gardeners was something I had been working on for quite a while when Kathy approached me. And it just seemed to be a good meld, because we would have we have 20 different experts, and they're featured throughout the book. So that it's more of a sense of the community that we wanted readers to have, the idea that these are the people you can invite into your own backyard and sit down with a lemonade and talk plants.
I love that so much. So you broke down the book into the healthy garden, healthy you, and healthy planet. So talk about a little bit about each of those different arenas and what you want people to take out of each section.
Well, certainly the healthy, the first section really is the practical, the how-to, the ways to get things done that will simply make your life easier and more fun.
Which is good.
Yeah. And then the second one is really the gifts the gardens give us, and the gifts the natural world give back, like healthy food or exercise or contemplation in the garden, all these different ways that we can use the gifts from the garden. And then the third one, do you want to talk about the third one, Kathy?
The third one is Healthy Planet. And that's really what you do in your own garden can affect the health of your, the things beyond the back fence. It can, you know, if you let runoff go down into the streams and pollute the streams, we are in a position in our own gardens to affect what happens beyond our gardens. And so I think together, gardeners can really, around the globe, make a difference in the health of the planet.
And I think it's so important to note that that could be your container garden on your deck in a downtown apartment. That can be in a community garden. That can be in your garden. It can
Right.
be anywhere and everywhere that you stick a plant into, right? And
Yep.
and also in your house plants too.
That's very true. In fact, we have some sections in the book where people don't have a lot of room. And for example, in Charleston, South Carolina, there are window boxes everywhere, and they are beautiful, and there are potted things everywhere. So even if you don't have space, there are ways to contribute through gardening.
I love that. So let's dive into the book. Mary Kate?
Okay, let's we're going to do a PowerPoint here, and I just want to say thank you all for coming to see this. And this morning we're basically going to talk about how to enhance your own health and healing through gardening. And we're going to look at why our gardens in the greater natural world matter to us. And we're going to go through 5 ways to improve your enjoyment of your surroundings. So
Let's get started.
shall we get to the first question?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. This is it. Why do we need health in our gardens? Why? I mean, what's there that makes it happen? And I will say that window box, Kathy, on the left.
That's Charleston.
That is Charleston, because whether you're just gardening in a window box or you're gardening just in grow bags and in containers, or whether you're basically looking at the entire acreage of what you have to do. And where is this particular garden, Kathy?
This is in the Northeast, and the owner had this big field, and he said, you know, I'm not a gardener, but I needed to do something with this. And so he just scattered some seeds out in this big property behind his house. And they pretty much, this beautiful meadow of Gloriosa daisies comes up every year, drops its seed. The birds love it. What's left creates this beautiful garden in the following year. So this is literally nature at work.
Yes.
I want to walk through that field.
Yeah, don't you? I mean, it just looks so wonderful. And I bet it looks good even when all those daisies go over. You know, it's just all of a piece, and it talks to the trees behind it. It's just great. Because, well, the answer to why we need the health is that it really is about connections, connections in the whole world. And this is a globe, a giant globe. I think it was like 10, 15 feet tall, and it turned, and it was all made up of succulents. And this was from the San Francisco Flower and Garden Show years ago. Do you want to tell about this, Kathy? Because I happen to love the picture.
Yes,
I love
this
it.
globe, Mary Kate mentioned that it's about, let's see, it's a 10-foot sphere, and it's planted with 20,000 succulents. And this was created by Robin Stockwell, who was a former grower of succulents and very passionate about them. But what I like about this, I was telling Mary Kate earlier, is that the fact that it's a globe and everybody gathered around it, but it spoke to me in that I had the thought, we on this globe, all around the world, we are in a position to make a difference in the health of this planet by what we do in our gardens or how we help beyond the back fence. And that's the message it sends to me.
Everything is connected. You can see it right there.
Yes.
Right. And it's also about why we need health in our garden is about ease. It's about a way for us to be able to relate in a very healthy way to nature herself. And our gardens and the extension of what grows beyond them, they're just healing places.
Mhm.
So now more than ever, all the scientific data is showing us that the natural world is vital to our well-being. So basically, how can we have more of that? So we're looking at today 5 ways that we can go ahead and do what we do. And we're using the Pacific Northwest as an example. But the fact is, if you're in other parts of the world, these 5 steps can also work for you. But we are just going to go for an example out of the Pacific Northwest. So let's go to the very first one, which is let's garden the way nature does. Basically, you're saying, let's look at nature as a mentor rather than a resource. It's one of those things that, frankly, I took these pictures up in the Cascades, and this is how nature gardens. This is what she does. And if I had that in my garden, I would be so happy. That's
Me too.
Yeah, it's just a wonderful combination. And she gardens from the sky all the way to the ground. I mean, you were talking about this, Kathy, the layering, the idea of a community, and every niche is filled. She never leaves anything bare, as you know, when you're weeding in your own garden, but she wants to fill in everything, even in the desert where plants might be far apart, they still, all the niches are filled. So this is an example of what you can do at home with that same technique. Everything here, from the trees and the shrubs and the grasses, all different forms, they're forming a community, and they're going right down to the ground. In this hell strip, there is, you'd think that was going to be grass, but it's not. It's a plant called Erniaria, which looks a little like baby's tears, only it's a lot tougher. And I know Little Prince of Oregon sells it online. A lot of other places do too. But this is a perfect example of what we can do as gardeners to really, we're taking our cue from what nature does. Okay.
And what is, so
Go
just, I want to pause there for just a moment. What's your take on grass, like a typical grass lawn?
If you need the grass, like if you have a play lawn, if you have grass is still the only thing that you can really run around on. There's no question. There are new grasses, that new seed that have longer roots. There's a lot of, if you have to have grass and you need it, go ahead and do it. But for instance, in that hell strip, there's no need for grass.
Yeah.
That really was one of those things where it needs to have something covering it. And that's a living mulch with the Erniaria, but it doesn't need to be grass. You can have other things that then tie in together, especially if that's all your lawn is doing, is making a green place for your eye to stop. What do you think, Kathy?
I absolutely agree. And also there are wonderful grasses that are more, I would say choose one that's really suited to where you live also. And there are wonderful, native mixes that you can choose too. So do your research before you plant a lawn. And also it depends, as Mary Kate says, on how you're going to use that space. If it's for kids play and stuff, you probably do want something soft and spongy underfoot.
That's right. Okay, well, let's talk about the diversity of plants.
Okay, these are 2 shots from, this is just out in the wild. This is from the Olympic rainforest, but really look at the diversity in those communities. There's diversity of form, there's diversity of color, and certainly all the niches are filled in this one. And this is 2 gardens in the Pacific Northwest that are basically following diversity. Do you want to talk about these, Kathy?
Yes, this garden on the left is in Washington State. And what I love about this, those trees were existing on the property. And the owners, it was their decision to make it look like it was planted by nature. So they came in and chose plants that would naturally in the wild grow along with those conifers, and they wanted it to look natural. So they'd have low mounds and here and there. If you look closely, there is a dry stream bed that wanders through them. Again, that looks like it was set there by nature. And they used stone mulches and then low plants. And the owners told me they used low plants so that they can channel your eye over those plants and take in the view as well without blocking it. And then just as a simple accent, they brought in these 2 stone pieces that they bought in I think it was somewhere in China or Japan, but they are stone things that are used to hold oriental carpets. If you spread them out and line them up, they hold oriental carpets. But they found those on an antiquing trip over there to Asia, and they're the perfect accent, natural again in this garden.
That is a beautiful garden.
And then the one on the right is Ernie and Marietta O'Byrne's Northwest Garden Nursery display garden. And again, this one particularly, talk about diversity. This was taken late in the fall, and look at the colors and the forms and the shapes that are in there. But I also just love that little place to sit there with the happy little chair.
I think I would be very happy sitting there.
Yes, exactly. So go ahead.
I was just going to jump in and say that garden, there's something, a little surprise tucked in everywhere. If you walk through it, Ernie and Marietta's garden, you walk through it and you look through some trees and you'll see a little chair or a little bird bath or a little piece of art. And every view takes in something different. So that's what you want to achieve. And that was a big carex fanning out on the top of the post.
Yes.
Lovely.
And this one, I want to talk about signature plants, because every place you live has what I think of as the easy peasy plants, the ones that, and they'll grow anywhere, they'll be there. And they are cultivars and they are natives. But because this is the Pacific Northwest, I wanted to talk about our signatures, which is conifers. And, we are in the great conifer growing belt around the world. So it is very easy to have them. But it is also, most of them are too big to be allowed. I know, Kathy, you have redwoods, California redwoods in your backyard. But in most times around houses in our gardens, it's better to go with the dwarf conifers rather than the really big guys like the Douglas firs and the big cedars. And this is, I just want to, conifers are so much fun to play with. You think of them as sort of dour because they don't bloom and everything, but look at this. This is a Mark and Val Bloom's garden on the left, and it is a weeping spruce. It's actually 3 weeping spruces. One has been trained to a post, a very hefty post, and it's going up, but the other 2 are spilling down over a very steep hill. Now, this is great. You're never going to have to go ahead and weed on that hill. That conifer is going to take care of it for you. And then all the dwarf conifers. The definition, all conifers keep on growing, but the definition of a dwarf is one that grows much more slowly, like by inches, and it should say so on the tag. And I just love the colors that the thing comes in, the forms, and especially in winter, conifers can be your incredible best friend. And this is my best friend. This is Chief Joseph. It is a shore pine. And I bought it, the picture on the left, I bought when it was just in a gallon can, because that's all I could afford. This is a regular green shore pine in the summertime, but in the winter, it turns golden. And it stays golden all winter. And I have it positioned, and this is the real tip. If you find a plant you love, put it in a place where you can see it from inside your house. So that I look out my breakfast room window and there it is every day, just shining away in the gloom and the snow and everything else going on. And backstory on this, it was found as a sport. A sport is a natural mutation. And this one was found in the Wallowa Mountains and brought into cultivation. And the Wallowas is where the Nez Perce Indians were, and that's why it's named for their leader, Chief Joseph.
Mhm.
But I love that one. And
It's
this
so
is
beautiful. How
why.
long, Mary Kate, how long
Yes.
did it take to grow that to that size?
Good question. 10 feet in 10 years.
Okay.
So it's not slow growing once it's in the ground, and it's in with heavy clay. It's not a fun place for it to grow, but it's a shore pine, and our shore pines are in the mountains and at the shore. So they grow in a lot of different places. And this is why they're expensive.
Beautiful.
This is 14 years of growing at the Isley Nursery. That's the wholesale nursery for conifers in Oregon. But 14 years, someone has laid a hand on all these plants. And
Wow.
that's why, you can have sticker shock, but think of this picture. Okay, and then I want to talk a little bit about just some natives and nativars, which is a cultivar. And by the way, they can say, oh, Acer circinatum, it's a native. This is not a native, it's a cultivar because it has single quote name around it. Or if it's branded, that's not a native. But in many of these, it's close to a native. And this Pacific Fire is very close, except that's its fall color and that's its wintertime look. And it is as bright as this picture. It's just amazing. So planting natives and nativars is a really good way to go for ease and health in the garden. And these are two ferns that will grow for us here. And I just want to say the Polystichum is the Western sword fern. It's great in the winter. It looks fabulous. Totally easy to grow. It grows like a weed. I love it. And Kathy, do you want to talk about the Woodwardia there on the right?
Well, it's a beautiful fern. We don't see too much of that around here, but it's just lacy and those fronds dance in the wind. It's in a beautiful shade of green. It's very robust.
Yes, and it grows. It has a huge range. It grows all the way down to Southern California. Which
we appreciate because there's too few that grow down here.
Absolutely. And here's just a couple of big shrubby plants. The one on the right is the red flowering currant, and it's simply large, and you put it in the back of the border where it's just going to be green for the rest of the year, and then it'll drop its leaves. It's deciduous, but it brings the hummingbirds. I know that they will be returning to my garden when these bloom. And I think they actually follow the plant north as they go. And the great thing about hummingbirds is they've discovered that, like crows, hummingbirds recognize individual faces.
I didn't
so
know
the
that.
Same hummingbirds are often coming back to your garden year after year. They will be the same ones, which is
well, Mary Kate, I'm going to welcome all of them back.
Yes, and having something for them.
And you can send all of the hummingbirds up to Seattle from California to Eugene to us.
You plant that ribes and you'll get them. They'll be there. And the other one is the thimbleberry. And again, it's a big rangy shrub. It's, 5-6 feet thicketing with palmate leaves there, and it's beautiful. It's got great flowers, and it is the home for the sphinx moth, and it's the only plant for the sphinx moth. So having this in the back of your garden, you're going to be encouraging sustainability of endangered species. And if you see holes in the plant itself, give yourself a pat on the back. That means
that's when you want to give yourself a pat and not take care of it, right?
Yeah, you don't know. Those holes mean that those caterpillars are eating, they're doing what they need to be doing in order to support that population of moths. So it's grand. And then here's just a couple groundy low things. The one on the left is piggyback plant. It's in every interior plant store, but it is our native, and it blooms like this, and it goes all along, it very politely creeping from shade to partial sun. And then, of course, our beloved Trillium there on the right. It goes away in the summertime, but you can plant it in places where other perennials will grow big and tall and go over it. So that is the natives. Now let's talk about how to build soil. And basically nature does this. She just drops all the leaves, right? And people gather them and they put them on their garden, and they are basically following what nature does. She always amends her soil from the top down. And but how does it work from the top down? Now, this is usually what we see. This is what we think about in our gardens, just right there. But this is really what's going on. All of these guys are.
I love this. This is such a great picture.
Oh, good. Because these are your garden helpers. Mm-hmm. These are the people who are working for you. People, well, they're beings that are working for you. Yes. And every one of these is bringing the stuff from the top down. And they didn't know this until very recently. It's only when technology has changed that we're starting to get a glimpse of what it's called the soil food web. And every time we dig, we have to know that we are disrupting it. Now, obviously, we can't plant a plant without digging it. But we no longer think to amend into the soil. The thought is that this is going to come from the top, and the soil food web is, and I have to say in 30 years, my heavy clay is a lot less heavier because we have mulched heavily on top and the critters have taken it in. So when it's very complicated on top, know that underneath your feet, it is just as complicated. And those things are hidden from you, but they're working for you.
And the no-till movement has gained a lot of steam the last couple of years for that very reason.
Yes, and they're still doing the science on this. They're still trying to figure. We're just started on what's actually happening under the ground. But if you need mulch, the best mulch, science says right now, the data says, is wood chips, fresh wood chips. And they used to say, oh, you can't use wood chips as a mulch because it'll rob the soil of nitrogen. Not true. And the good thing about the chips is that they're all different sizes. So they break down slowly. That makes your job easier. And often they're free, because you can make friends. Those are my arborists, and they will come and drop a pile of wood chips in your driveway. And there's something called chip drop. Do you have chip drop in the Bay Area? You're shaking your head, Joni.
Well, not that I'm aware of in Seattle. Kathy, what about you in Northern California?
We have building supply places that where you can sometimes find them, but they're a little harder to find down here.
Oh, okay.
And then Kathy or Mary Kate, somebody asked in the chat about using coffee grounds. What do you both think about that?
Well, they're organic matter. They do not acidify the soil. I'm sorry, but use them in your garden. And if it makes you feel better to put them on the acid-loving plants, do it, because it is soil amendment and on the surface, and the critters will take it. But the actual amount of acidity has gone out of the coffee by the time it's grounds.
And what are the acidic loving plants that would like that coffee?
It'll be camellias. Yeah. Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, yeah, acid soil is not an issue down here. We're alkaline mostly down here, but yeah, just most of those Northwest plants will just thrive. The ferns, the
rhodies, and hydrangeas.
Yes, they will. So, and actually changing, that's something an extra, but it's really hard to change the pH of your soil. if you want it is an ongoing and Sisyphean task to actually change it. It's far better to get plants that like the pH of your soil than to have to go ahead and try to change it. So but anyway, there's my happy arborists in the middle there. And this is number 4. Nature welcomes everybody into her garden. Everybody, not only people, but the other critters that we love. And they're so beautiful. Kathy, you want to speak on these 2 plants? I mean, basically it's plant things that your pollinators really love.
That's right. And there are so many here in California, there are so many beautiful salvias and well, there's wonderful plants everywhere that attract honeybees, and they are so troubled right now with all kinds of things in California, diseases and so forth, that people are truly worried about honeybee population shrinking. But if you plant this particular image was photographed in Northern California, and honeybees going, just loving them. We have a lot of honeybees here thanks to salvias that I'm growing. And so think about it. There are lists of things that will attract various pollinators, and I would check and see what plants will grow in your area, and really do plant them in your garden because they need all the help they can get. The monarch butterfly pictured it right here is sitting on a milkweed plant, and monarchs are the Western monarch is very endangered right now. And Robin Stockwell, whom I interviewed for this book, and his interview is there, is very active in preserving local monarch butterfly habitats in Orange County. There's a particular area there where there are native milkweeds still growing. And Ron will take hikers through there, and he'll stop at one particular part of Corona del Mar up against where the housing developments are, and he'll say, "Stop, listen. Do you hear any activity?" No, just traffic and noise and nothing. He'll take them further down this trail toward the ocean, and there's hills and so forth there covered with this milkweed, and he'll say, "Stop, listen. It's alive. There are bees, there are butterflies, and this is where the monarchs come. They migrate north from Mexico, and they end up here thanks to these milkweeds." And because of that, Ron is a general manager at a big nursery down there. They are selling a lot of native milkweeds there, but there are milkweeds native to the eastern coast of this country, and I would say find plants that attract bees and butterflies because they need all the help we can give them.
Yeah. A lot of people are talking about pollinator highways now for communities, so they can go from container pot to container pot, so we can bring in as many pollinators as possible.
Yes.
I know Woodinville, Washington is looking at doing that, and it's a movement across the country.
Yes, absolutely. Well, here's just another little critter that's maybe in your garden and you don't tend to notice. And there's a whole series of these. I mean, this guy was on my driveway just the other day.
Oh, look at how cute he is.
Oh,
He lives here. He's been here for years. And I know it's the same guy. And we talk to each other on occasion, but don't tell anybody that. And all the things that we have, we may not want them all. This guy decided it wanted to see what was in my coffee cup when I put it down. And the fact is that, oh, get out the sluggo, get out that. But these guys are doing good in the garden. They're chewing up stuff. They're making it so they're feeding the soil. The trick is, for us gardeners, is to figure out how to live with them rather than fighting them all the time. And one of the ways is to plant plants they don't like hostas are sort of slug heaven. But if you plant the really thick-leafed ones, the slugs leave them alone. Even big guys like this are going to leave them alone. Or you plant something that slugs don't like at all, like a pulmonaria, which has that same sort of leafy look that a hosta has, and many pulmonarias are beautiful, but it has fuzzy leaves, and the plants don't, the slugs don't like it, the rabbits don't like it, and I suspect the deer don't like it either.
Mm,
But this is not the way we should garden.
no.
That's basically it, and that's enough said.
Yeah, enough said.
Yeah. And so these two pictures really are about everything that we need in the garden, and everything else that's in the garden needs it as well. We need shelter, we need food, and we need water. And this one, particularly on the left, just basically is supplying everything. Everything is right there for all the critters, including things like snakes. I know it was not a happy thing. The person wrote about, oh, I don't want to welcome snakes in my garden. The fact is, snakes are doing a really good job. They are
It's just a little scary sometimes, Mary
It
Kate.
is scary. And what it is if you have a brush pile, if you have a place back where you think, it could be, just be aware when you're there, bang the ground. Snakes are not lurking there to scare them out of you. They really are just trying to do their life as well.
Exactly.
And unless it's a heavy duty, nest of rattlesnakes, which I would recommend having someone come move, that's really what you need. And then the one on the picture on the right is really all about the honeybees. And do you want to talk to that, Kathy? The honeybees there?
Oh, yes. This is a garden designed specifically for bees, and the rhododendron, and there's something that blooms in all seasons here. And as you see, there's a beehive right in the middle of it. And the people who keep the bees decided to give them everything they needed within easy flight. So foxgloves on the left, foxgloves on the right, the rhododendron, there's all kinds of things that bloom there that they can just fly out of the hive, and there it is.
I am going to put a beehive in my garden.
Hooray!
I'm adding that.
Hey, there's a wonderful podcast called Pollination
Mm,
that is all about beekeeping and
Okay.
other all kinds of bees, not just it's a lot of it is about our native bees and what they need. And so it's a terrific, I just recommend that podcast.
Thank you.
And this is the last thing. This is basically creating community like nature does. And you want to talk about this picture, because I just think it's such a fabulous point that nature's not about the fences.
That's right, Mary Kate. And this is in Colorado. And what I like about this garden is it's designed to embrace the existing prairie. And rather than put a fence there, the owners told me we didn't want to look out at a fence. We wanted to look at the prairie. This is nature. And so what they did was they said, well, yes, we'll have a little bit of lawn near the house because we have parties and people want to stand on grass. But we're going to plant a transition area between the prairie and the garden. And we're going to plant things that attract pollinators, things that are native to Colorado. Oh, they've got salvias and all kinds of natives in there, and fescues and things that thrive naturally in the area. So it is their transition. And as you see, there's a path that goes, if you look at the bench, and then they're following that line site, there's some steps down, and you can take that path. It's just a rocky path that goes right to the prairie through plants that thrive with very little water, which is an issue there, and to the prairie. And it's beautifully designed to embrace the natural world.
Well, that's what we need to do. And so this is number 5. This is basically ways that you can reach out, just some ideas into your community. And this is, let me introduce you to Teresa Spate. She, she's a master gardener, and then in 2020, when everybody had to go home, she went home to her suburban neighborhood, the kind of neighborhood where nobody talks to anybody and nobody walks on the street, and everybody, they're only home after 5, and all day long there's nothing happening. And because she was a master gardener, she decided to her response was, let's plant more plants. I love that. And what she did then is she had these extra plants and she put them out on her sidewalk with this sign. And within an hour, all of them were gone. All of them were gone. And so she planted more and she took them to people's front porches. And she went ahead and started talking to people, and people started talking to each other. And somebody wanted to know, well, why is my, I'm failing with my squash. And she said, well, they're a little too close together, so we'll plant them again. And I mean, she was just great. But everybody started talking to each other and they started sharing plants. And now, 3 years later, this community has completely changed. They have block parties, they have get-togethers, they've even organized to the point where they're getting grants to beautify their neighborhood. And all of it.
Fantastic. Gardening is about community. And
yes,
that is what Teresa built
Yep.
there. And what we're all capable of doing in our yards. I mean, so many people walk by my garden here in Ballard, close to Seattle. And there is a community built because we start conversation. Somebody was just walking by the other day. I waved, I went outside, she knew a friend of mine. And I mean, it was like, the ripple effect was huge.
Yep.
I also want to just note that Teresa wrote this beautiful book called Black Flora, Profiles of Inspiring Black Flower Farmers and Florists. It's the first gardening book on the Black community and what they've done nationally in the garden. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I can't say enough about it. So that is Teresa as well.
Yes, she's a real mover and shaker.
She is a mover and shaker.
And another thing you can do is basically support the people who are already gardening in farming levels to sustain the earth. And go ahead and find them wherever you find them and throw some money at them because they are doing the work that needs to be done.
There are CSAs everywhere. We just signed up with ours, Viva Farms, from the Skagit Valley.
Excellent.
We're very, very lucky to have a prolific group of farmers that sell at local farmer markets, as well as, being able to sign up for a CSA.
Yes. And you really, some places you have to seek them out, but they're there. It might be that little farm stand that just opened for a couple months in the summertime, or as organized as the CSAs are, because they're great. And you can split boxes with other people. You can make choices on what you get. It's terrific. It's really a win-win. But one of the other things you can do is plant trees, any trees, anywhere. Sit on the board of your local town, because many times they're not up to date on what are the best trees to be planted. And so you can use your gardening knowledge to do this. And Kathy, do you want to talk about Brent Green from the book?
I do. Brent Green is, he fell in love with trees for whatever reason when he was a child. His father's a judge in Los Angeles. And he decided that he wanted to use his Boy Scout money and so forth. I mean, things that he had saved in his piggy bank and go out and buy trees. And what he would do as a child was go to nurseries and say, hey, do you have any plants that have outgrown their pots and that nobody wants and I can have? And he started planting them around Los Angeles. And when he and his wife married and moved to a community in eastern Los Angeles that had no trees, and it was kind of bleak, he took it upon himself to plant trees starting in front of his own house and gradually moving out street by street, planting trees. And that because his neighborhood and his area had no rules against planting trees. Some communities do say it's a city function, but there was no city function for planting trees in his neighborhood. And neighbors would see him planting these trees and say, what are you doing? And he'd say, I'm planting trees. Do you want to help? Yes. The neighborhood got together, and I found an aerial shot at one time of Los Angeles before and after. He lived near near one of the major freeways in Los Angeles, east to west. And before Brent Green came along, it looked like a bleak urban desert. After Brent Green, he planted fast things. He would go to nurseries and get things that they didn't want anymore. Whatever it took to make trees happen. He got volunteers. They ended up planting trees in parks. So it went from urban desert to beautiful leafy community. And as a result, he said something wonderful happened. People started not fearing coming out on the streets, but they wanted to come out and meet their neighbors.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? Well, and all because of one person's idea to make change.
Idea.
Right?
Exactly. Now, this picture, by the way, is in the Netherlands, but I just wanted to point out that that's the same sidewalk in both pictures. You can see it's a little closer in the 2020, but that's the same sidewalk. And that's what they did to create space for the trees. And it's a completely different neighborhood.
Yeah, it's completely different.
Yeah.
We had somebody on our block about 20 years ago initiate a tree growing initiative here in Ballard, and our community is different because of Sam. Yes. And and the city provided trees for us free of charge to plant, because this whole neighborhood in the early 20s was all cut down of all the trees. So Ballard was the community in Seattle with no trees, but guess what? Now it has a lot of trees after the
20 years. That's
Yep.
great. 20 years. Well, that's the old saying. When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But
Can
no,
always plant trees,
best
though.
time is anytime. Anytime.
Best time
can
is
do it.
anytime.
Yes. So basically the summation here really is teach somebody to plant. Teach somebody the skills of gardening. It doesn't have to be a child, but what you're giving at whatever level you are, what you're giving is a lifelong process that will bring health and peace and joy to people. So it's one of those things that it's probably one of the biggest, is to create our communities where we, like the plant communities, can join together and be strengthened as a result. And I would like to just say one last thing about it, and it's from the book. Would you mind if I quote?
I would love for you to read it, Mary Kate.
Okay, let me find the page here, and I will. And it's very, hold on, where are we?
While you're looking for that, there's this one just quote that I just love that you put in here from John Muir. When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe.
Everything else, yes.
Everything.
And
thank you, John Muir, so prolific.
Okay, there it is. It's the last part of it's why grow a healthy garden? And this is what we wrote. In this time of upheaval and rapid change, how we interact with our gardens matters more than ever. These methods for increasing the health of the flora and the fauna around you are your contributions to the natural world we live in, no matter how small or how big they may be. All things growing are pieces in a puzzle that are intertwined in ways that we are just beginning to understand. Whether you decide to care for a single houseplant or acres of garden, you are connecting yourself to a world of wisdom that is far greater than you can know, full of mystery, surprises, and delight. You become the tiniest part of the massive, fragile, and yet resilient web that lives and grows and passes on. Welcome home.
That is so beautiful, Mary Kate and Kathy. I just could not have said it better. It's just beautiful. And
Thank you.
Something that I have always believed, and it's more clear to me now than ever before that everything is connected, and we cannot not think about every step that we take, every action that we make, and how it impacts everything else in the world that's around us.
Yes.
And you so eloquently put that as the
Oh,
end to the book.
Thank you. I
Thank
do
you.
want to thank these folks, because without them, our book would not be what it is. And these are people whose slides we have used in this talk. So I just wanted to say thanks a lot to all the photographers, because
Yes,
they are
they-
so wonderful.
They captured so much so beautifully. I'm glad you have an image of the book, which I have right here. I want to thank you both so much. This is such an inspiring book. I wanted to share it because it's something that's very important to me about how we treat our world, how we treat our backyard, and that everything is connected, how, the dogs go outside, how we treat the little microorganisms in the garden and our soil health, and how it impacts everything, of our flowers, what we eat. And so thank you for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom with us today.